welcome to the archive speaker meeting. Can we please have a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, followed by the serenity prayer. Prayer.
God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference today.
All right, we ask that you please take a moment to now silence your cell phones out of respect for your fellows. We will now pass the basket in honor of our seventh tradition, which states every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. $25 will go to the renting of this meeting space. The rest will go to District 17. AA Preamble, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Welcome to the Racine Area Archive Speaker Meeting. Consistent with Alcoholics Anonymous General Service Archives mission, our purpose is to document permanently the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, to make the history of the organization accessible to AA members and other researchers, and to provide a context for understanding AA's progression, principles, and traditions. We will meet here at the Grove Club the last Sunday of every month. The first half of the meeting will be a question and answer period, followed by a break. After the break, our speaker will resume with sharing their experience, strength, and hope pertaining to a chosen page from the Big Book or the 12 steps, the 12 and 12. This meeting will be recorded and stored at the Racine Area Central Office. A digital copy will be sent to Area 75 Archives, and you may contact District 17 Archives Chair to arrange access to the recordings. If there's anyone here with less than 30 days sobriety, please raise your hand. And then this is not to single anyone out, but simply to welcome you if you're here. Is there anyone here with more than 15 years of sobriety? Please raise your hand. Welcome. The speakers selected for this meeting are old timers, and AA old timer is any member who has been continuously sober for a significant period of time. Doesn't mean that you're old. The definition of significant is open to interpretation and varies widely. For the purposes of this meeting, an old timer is considered anyone with 15 years or more of sobriety. The old timers' interviews serve as a representation of the significant impact that long-term sobriety can have on our AA community. Without further ado, I will now introduce our speaker, Katie.
Hi.
And we'll get on with the questions. What was life like right before you got sober?
So my sobriety date is April 2nd, 2010, and right before I got sober, I wasn't able to keep a job. I had limited contact with my kids. I'd walked out on my husband and children. I wasn't able to pay rent. I was staying with someone that I was supposed to be paying rent to. I was heavily involved in the bar scene and fallen apart.
And when did you realize your drinking was out of control?
The morning that I woke up from my last drink, April 2nd, 2010. I woke up that morning and I was finally able to see that there wasn't going to be a thing I would be able to do to figure this out. That delusion had been smashed, but I can also say that I was also fully aware that if I didn't take some different actions immediately, that I would either by the end of the day or by the end of the week, I didn't know how much time that I had, that I would go right back to the delusion that I would be able to figure it out on my own and I would drink again.
And what finally made you say that you needed help?
I think it's that moment of clarity of, as an alcoholic, as described in the book, I didn't have the language to talk about the mental blank spot. I didn't have the language that said self-knowledge avails us nothing, like our literature talks about. But I did have that experience that I would say first spiritual awakening of understanding that if I didn't do things different and if I didn't get help, I was just going to drink again.
Okay, and then how did you first hear about AA?
I was 15 or 16 years old. I'd been drinking less than a year. Already I started to show signs that I wasn't able to control drinking. I would get into some trouble, and when I said I'm not going to do this again, I honestly meant it. So when I would drink again, I was shocked. And at the time, I wasn't drinking every day. It would be whenever it would come up, and yet I kept finding myself in these circumstances. Because I have had issues from a very young age, I had a child psychologist who recommended that I go to AA for an idea of Alcoholics Anonymous.
All right, and then what do you remember most about your first meeting?
It was a women's meeting that was suggested that I went to. I got dropped off. It was a table much like this where women were sitting around. I don't know what anybody was talking about, but when it came to me, I told them about my limited experiences with alcohol, and I asked them, did this make me an alcoholic? And everyone got very quiet because in our community, you have to identify yourself. But there was a woman down at the end who leaned forward and said, "Honey, keep coming back."
Nice. And then what helped you stay sober in the first 30 to 90 days?
I would say fear and desperation. I think understanding that there wasn't anything that I could do to prevent myself from taking another drink, that level of understanding that you were out of control terrified me. And I was willing to do anything. I'd been to AA before, and all the suggestions, I had an excuse of why I couldn't do it and how it wouldn't work, and I forgot about this. But armored with desperation and fear of I just don't want to take another drink, I'll do anything. I figured it out. I figured out how to call a sponsor every day. I couldn't figure it out before. I figured out how to go to a meeting every day. I figured out how to not go to the bar and just have a Diet Coke. So I would say that I had a willingness, and I could finally hear the suggestions, and was able to, with the help of people around the tables and my sponsor, take those suggestions and stay sober.
Okay, and then what was AA like in this area at that time?
So my first, I think 60 days, I was mainly in Kenosha and at the Kenosha Alano Club, and we would go down to the basement of the club and people would be hanging out there reading newspapers. And there were mainly, in my recollection and time, men, older men. And I just have to say, they were always so welcoming and friendly. And when I got there, they were very much like, "Honey, you just come sit down right here." I would say that when I would get suggestions to call women, I would try, and I did not get return calls. What I would try to engage with the limited women that were in, to my knowledge, in that area, it seemed more like there was a culture of you approach them. And I didn't understand that culture of like, what do you mean? You just walk up to people and then you don't know what to say and you're kind of standing there and I would go back to my sponsor and be like, well, this is what I'm doing and this is what I tried. And she would just tell me, you just keep coming back, honey.
Nice. Are there any ways the local AA community has changed since then?
I would say that women in this program have become a strong and vibrant, supportive group who specifically what I observe is women come to meetings and they are looking for the newcomer, that at the end of the meeting, we're exchanging numbers, we're getting them meeting lists. We're also trying to create a safe community for women to come into where they don't have to be harassed by people who are not here to get sober. We all come here for different reasons. I'll tell you, when I first was coming around, I was looking for a date. You know, and whatever it is you're looking for, you're gonna find. If you're looking for an opportunity not to drink anymore and to change your life, you will find that 100%. If you're just coming here looking for a date, I'll let you know you can find a date here. Now, I don't know if you're gonna find sobriety with that, but you'll find yourself a date. So I think there is a wonderful group of women in our community that are looking out for other women to offer them support and hope. I think the culture has also changed quite a bit, where women are now getting invited, come join this group, let me introduce you to other people. Getting calls back, initiating calls. I am just so proud to be part of our Racine community.
Nice. And then what daily or weekly habits have kept you sober?
Since my sobriety date, I have always had a sponsor. I've gone through the 12 steps numerous times. I've done spot check inventories with my sponsor as well. I am a regular attendee of meetings. I'm always involved in service work. I raise my hand to sponsor. I've had the privilege of taking other women through the 12 steps, and I'm heavily involved in our fellowship. For me, I have found that I need all those things. Not everybody needs to do as much as I do, but I'm sick. That has not changed. So I find that the more that I put this forth as a priority in my life, I'm able to stay sober and get connected to a higher power greater than myself.
And then how has your relationship with a higher power changed over time?
Whew. All right. So I think in the beginning, this idea of step 3 of turn your will and your life over to the care of God, I had this idea that if you would offer anything to God or anyone with an authority, they're just going to take everything away. And I don't know about you, but I like what limited things that I had and what I wanted in life. Like I wanted a safe place to live. I wanted an opportunity for my kids to be able to spend time with me. I wanted a job that I could afford those things. And I, at the very end, was like, maybe even a cat, maybe. I didn't even know what to ask for. But the idea of letting God take any of those minuscule things away, I was like, I just had such a hard time with this idea of God. And what I can say today is I have a completely different idea. I believe that God's grace, I could just cry. I believe that God's grace is what has allowed me to continue to grow and the amazing, profound miracles and transformations in my life have been by letting go of things that I was not to hold on to. And what seemed like, I don't know, like God is punishing me, were the greatest gifts that I have ever been given in my life. We're going to turn on the waterworks early.
What has been the hardest part in your sobriety?
Oh my gosh. I think, so every time I've hit, this obstacle, this what are you going to give to God, I think those are the hardest moments. And my experience is the longer I'm here, the harder those things can be. I have lost jobs and thought that was awful. And now I'm like, like a job. My kids have had their struggles, and I have been so afraid for them. And I guess the most recent thing was I went through a really difficult time going through a divorce. And I would say I cannot recall a more painful experience in my sobriety.
How did you stay sober during the stress and grief from those major life changes?
I stayed so close to AA. I went to meetings. I never tried to filter anything that I was saying. I was telling everybody, like, this is what's happening in my life, and I just don't know what to do. I need help. I was praying. I was crying out to God. I had so much help from my sponsor. I was calling her every morning at like 6:30 in the morning, just trying to get to work. I didn't know how to process anything that was going on in my life. And she was just so kind and so gentle with the step-by-step things. And I know we talk a lot about this in sobriety, about how we can be the dominant, overbearing, we're trying to take over your life. But I'll have to say this, when it comes to being a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, in my experience working with other women, sometimes the things that we try to do to be, to get perfect security, which is an illusion, is we try to be submissive. And we'll give up every aspect of who we are and what we want and what we think to be able to keep certain relationships. And my experience has shown that first, it doesn't work. But also, my sponsor helped me to be able to separate between selfishness and being able to have a place to sleep. That was the kind of thing I needed help with. I didn't know where I was supposed to sleep at night, and trying to negotiate that with the circumstances I was in. It was just such a messed up circumstance, and she was the one that said, no, you go back and you let them know that you're gonna take the spare bedroom, and that's where you're gonna sleep. And I needed somebody just step by step for things that I just didn't know how to do to help me walk through being able to have a voice and understand that not every want that someone has and need someone has is based in selfishness. I didn't know that.
What keeps you coming back to AA today?
Oh my God. It has changed my life. It's changed my life. I'm so grateful. This is where my friends are. You guys are my family. My emergency contacts are women in Alcoholics Anonymous. I am grateful for the relationships, helping new women come into the program and letting them know, I've stood where you've stood. I know how that feels, and you just keep coming back, honey.
And then, what brings you the most joy in sobriety now?
Oh my, the same. You guys are my family. You know every aspect of myself. Again, I don't filter anything. You have everything. Um, and, just watching the light turn on for other women, seeing how women can be overcome with the shame of a relationship with how they showed up in their kids' lives, and being able to say, again, I know how that feels, honey. It's going to be different. Like, you just keep coming back. The way you're looking at it is going to change.
And then what would you tell someone new who's struggling?
Keep coming back. Hold on. Let's see how many numbers you have in your phone. Set a timer in your phone for, every hour if you need to remember to pray. I have been given the gift of a lot of awesome prayers that have helped me through really difficult times. Specifically, there was a woman who told me about the most awful, terrible, horrible prayer there is, and that's the one where you take the thing that you want most, the one that you're struggling with, and you say, God, you just cannot have this, and you tell God you can have it. And it's the most excruciating kind of prayer to have, but that is the source of freedom. So anyone struggling, you offer it to God. It's worth it.
And then looking back, what are you most grateful for?
All you guys. So my youngest is now, when I got here, my kids were 3, 5, and 7. And now my youngest is 19, and she's already planning for me to be decrepit and needing to be in nursing home care. And she doesn't want to stay in the area. So she's like, Mom, if you came and lived with me though, and I didn't live in the area, would you come live with me? Because she knows that this is my community, this is my home, this is my family. So now she's starting to test it. She's like, free room and board, or your friends in AA, Mom. Really? We'll see what happens when I hit that spot in life. But this brings me the greatest joy, being here with you guys.
And then are there any people or groups or events that stand out to you in local AA history?
Oh my gosh. So I am part of the Racine Young People Saturday 8 p.m. Meeting. And that group has done a lot of cool events. We've done a lock-in. We flew a speaker in from Colorado. Yesterday we did a newcomers workshop. And I've had the ability to write a couple plays. And I have to tell you, what started out the first time that I wrote this melodrama, and it was a complete spoof, and using all the lines from the big book that are kind of funny and quirky. Watching people who had never been in theater before show up and try out and have so much fun and have a connection, and watching their families. And this is, again, I'm just going to get choked up. Our families are so impacted by the devastating impacts of alcohol abuse, and watching families show up for these people who couldn't show up for them, and watching them come together as a family, that was such an amazing experience to not just see the people that I love and I'm connected to, and what it's like to be part of a theater community, but to have their family show up. And then the last one we did, we ended up with 20 some odd people that were in it we doubled in size. And I just finished writing another one. And I'm really excited that I hope that we'll have even more people. I just think bringing our community together to enjoy life. We are not a glum lot. It's been amazing experiences here.
And then is there one last question? Is there anything you'd like future AA members to know?
So I think The traditions have been extremely helpful. I like where I hear people say that the steps are there so I can recover from this fatal illness. And the traditions are here so essentially I don't set AA on fire and it can be there for future alcoholics. I think the traditions, my favorite is tradition 1, and it talks about unity. And it asks the question to all of us as we're coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, am I being divisive or am I here to be supportive of the group? And I think that that mindset of unity has been extremely helpful to ensure that AA is able to continue. I think sometimes when we get this solution and it is a miracle and we want to preserve it, we can get real tight with it and want everything to stay the same and nothing should change. And it's just this idea that take a breath, that God is present in all of our lives and keeping us sober. And in these rooms, magic happens within the fellowship, and it is okay for change to happen. We don't have to hold on quite so tight, but unity is extremely important in Alcoholics Anonymous survival.
Very good, thank you. We'll take a short break, and then after that, Katie will resume with sharing her experience, strength, and hope. All right, we're going to get started here again. Katie's going to read a page from the 12 and 12. Katie, can you read your page? And then, after that, can you spend the remainder of your time sharing your experience, strength, and hope on that reading?
Hi. So, still Katie, still an alcoholic. I think when I look at my time in Alcoholics Anonymous, I see a lot of old ideas that I have continued to carry with me. And one of those ideas is trying to manage well. When I look at that, I see, I think that I should be able to do things myself. My first husband used to call me Katie Can Do, and it was not done in like jovial, it was aggressive, but I took that as a badge of honor. I can also see that I have been trying to manage the outside of my life, thinking that somehow that's going to fix my spiritual condition. When I look at a lot of what my fear has been driven by is this idea of being unworthy of love. It's in every fourth and fifth step I've had, and every one I've ever listened to. That's the core behind everything. So I'm constantly trying to fix out here so that I'll feel different in here. And I'm doing that not just before I got here, but in sobriety as well. So this is where a relationship with a higher power has been instrumental in my life and letting go of some of those old ideas. So what I want to read for you today is from the 12 and 12, step 11, and it talks about prayer. It says, we discover that we do receive guidance for our lives to just about the extent that we stop making demands upon God to give it to us on order and on our terms. Almost any experienced AA will tell how his affairs have taken remarkable and unexpected turns for the better as he tried to improve his conscious contact with God. He will also report that out of every season of grief or suffering, when the hand of God seemed heavy or even unjust, new lessons for living were learned, new resources of courage were uncovered, and that finally and inescapably the conviction came that God does move in mysterious way, his wonders to perform. This is my absolute favorite reading. In the times of my sobriety where it just felt like life was so hard, and the question of, did I get sober for this? Whatever this is. Every time I heard it, I was like, absolutely yes. It feels like God is somehow punishing me. And what I have found upon inventory is really what I've found is here are all the things that I am willing to do for the illusion of perfect security. And what I do is I create a life of finite self versus relying on infinite God. And it warns about this in our big book. And that's where I find that I have been lonely. That's where I found that I have questioned, is this what I'm getting sober for? This is like the blessing of sobriety. I've been under this delusion that God has wanted me to be a martyr. And there have been times that I have cried out to God, when I first got sober and understanding what it meant to be an alcoholic, and I wasn't going to be able to figure this out on my own, I think was my first experience of crying out to God and saying, I'll do anything. And in that moment, I ran and I got a sponsor, and I took some direction, and my life started changing. But again, like I swing in this pendulum of like spiritual life to alcoholic death, never knowing how close I am to my next drink. And with that, I can say that when I start thinking that I need to figure things out and I have a plan of what it is that I need and I want, is when it all starts again with this sense of loneliness, and God is punishing me by not giving me what I want. I have countless stories of experiences where, I think I was a year and a half sober, and I had just gotten this 2-bedroom apartment for my kids and I. Moving from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 2-bedroom apartment, I felt like the Jeffersons. If you guys know that old 70s show, like, I'm moving on up, that's right. And right after I signed that lease, like a month later, I lost my job. And I was like, what am I going to do? And it wasn't just about having a place to live for my kids, right? Because we could all justify, I need a place to live. No, I had the attachment of, in order to be worthy of love, I have to show up for my kids and provide a life that looks a certain way. Like that 1-bedroom apartment where I had a futon and they were small enough that I can lay them right next to each other. Eventually they're going to get big. What am I going to do? And this idea that if I just keep doing the right thing, the next right thing, that somehow my life was going to improve in the way of fiscally, I'll have more money in my pocket and I'll have a better place to live and I'll be able to get my kids the latest, Xbox. I don't even know if kids play that anymore. Whatever the thing is, I want these outside things to validate me as a parent and the shame and guilt that I feel for how I showed up for them. And being able to, go to their dad and be like, hey, I got a new place, to oh shit, what's going to happen next? There were times where my kids had struggled in such a way that they needed some outside support and help. And again, in those moments, I'm like, the shame and the guilt of the parent that I am, did I do this to my kids? Is this why they need the help that they need? But I can tell you, in all of those circumstances, I lost my job for 7 months. And what I got was actually a vacation. Somehow I was able to pay my bills. I had gone back to school and my student aid paid my bills just enough that we weren't homeless. And when my kids were going through their struggles, what I found is I got to be a parent that was advocating for my kids in an area of their life that there weren't other people advocating. When I think it is God who is doing something to me, what I'm getting is an opportunity. And during the time that I didn't have my job, I had a lot of opportunities for service work and getting involved and being connected in a way that I wouldn't have been able to before. And I think like when I think of my most recent experience a few years ago, going through this divorce, it was not something that, I raised my hand and said, I would like this to end. It was something from my experience that said, I wasn't expecting this. And during that time, I tried so hard to cling on and do anything to keep that relationship. I was crying out to God I think every night, like, please, like, haven't I been good enough? Like, at the time, I was sponsoring like 14 women. I was involved in all this like service work. I was like doing more at work and involved in all these committees and doing all these extra like tasks. I don't even know. I don't know how I was able to lead that life at the time, and I was doing it in such a way that when you're on the beam, you don't even notice where your time is going. You're not even thinking about yourself. You're just like, I'm picking up the phone on my way home from work, and I'm calling a sponsee or my sponsor and talking with new women. And on my way to work, there's early risers, and I'm talking to all these people. And somehow there was enough time for absolutely everything. And I raised my hand every time a woman asked to be sponsored, because I knew God would make the time that was needed. And I looked at that, not in the term of bartering with God, but when it came down to losing something that I thought that I desperately wanted to keep, I did. I looked at that and I went, isn't that good enough for you? Do you have to take everything? Like, what is it that you want from me? And what I found is like all of those experiences of sponsoring all those women and being so part of Alcoholics Anonymous is what kept me here during that time of going through a loss. Like, I cannot imagine, like, each one of those components kept me in the middle and kept me close to God. What I thought was like, look, I'm good enough, was the gift that God had given me with those opportunities to be able to not drink during such a difficult time. And I have to say, in coming out from that, it was a year of me crying out to God, trying to say, I'll do anything, and looking for perfect security in situations that there just isn't perfect security. And when we talk about the importance and reliance upon a higher power instead of a human being, it's in these moments, because relationships and things change. I can tell you that I had one of my dearest friends stop talking to me for like 2 or 3 months. And if she had been my only connection to Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have been screwed. But again, in the middle of the herd, connected to as many women as possible, allowed her to have whatever she was going through, because it's never personal. It might seem like it's personal, but it's never personal. What people have going on in their life has nothing to do with me. And that's another thing that's been part of this blessing and understanding, is that where I think things are happening to me is sometimes just life is happening. And people going through what they need to go through and releasing what they need to release so they can continue on their journey. And you only can pray that they're continuing on their journey with a God of their understanding as well. And that's really where this is not a selfish program. And that the things that we are releasing, what I have found, is God making room for the next blessing. What I thought I couldn't live without in a year of struggle and not knowing like how to breathe, how to work, how to be a parent during that time. When I was finally able to let go, it was 2 weeks after I moved out. And I got to tell you that when I moved out of that house, There was a host of people who showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think there were so many people that y'all only had to carry 2 boxes, and I had a shit ton of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there was just so many people. And I don't think I carried a single box because I could barely put one foot in front of the other that day. People were there for me in a way that I could never repay. And 2 weeks later, I got the greatest gift from the grace of God that released me from that pain and that desire that life should be different. And I don't know if you've ever tried to hold on to something that was not for yours to keep. But when you finally get that release that it doesn't have that hold on you, the whole world just lights up. And you're like, this, I can finally breathe. And you get to see like how grateful you are for your life. And that was just 2 weeks after moving out that I got that relief. And I just think it's God's blessing. And I feel like the biggest thing that I can offer when I talk to women all the time, and you know, I can hear it because I have had it. What am I trying to rest perfect security on? What do I think my exchange is? And sometimes it's with the job, and sometimes it's with the relationship, and sometimes it's with the kids. But I have to say that I have an ear for it now. and I don't think people appreciate it very much because, you know, it's essentially saying you're trying to rely on something you can't rely on. You're trying to manage and make something happen that you think is going to give you something that it just cannot. You think you have everything lined up, that if your boss gives you this job and then you get that amount of money, like everything's going to go well. You know, you think you have it all figured out. But in 6 months, all that can change. Like you're resting things on something that is not, it's not possible to have security in. And this is the power of God that we keep getting directed to, and I cannot say it enough. And don't get me wrong, I have not come up to a podium to tell you, like, I know how to release everything to God. I do not. What I have is the ability now to identify with the help of some women and my sponsor, some areas that I am still not willing to give up. And I have a conversation with God now every week going, all right, I just want to acknowledge that here are some areas that I don't want to give up, and I'm scared that you're going to make me give this up. I don't know how I'm going to let go of it, but I know that I'm holding on to it. And I can tell you that before I would have wanted to run from God and not acknowledge it. I would never have wanted to offer it up. And I have to say, when I was going all through this with that divorce, those things that I was like, well, don't make me give up this other thing too. Like, if you're going to take him, like, you can't take this other stuff that means so much to me too. Come on, like. I know, I'm a spiritual giant up here. I just know that I cause my own pain and suffering the more that I hold on to anything. And I might be a little more trigger happy these days when I see like the slightest bit of struggle with something. I'm just like, okay, it's yours, you can have it. I don't want to do this anymore. That my experiences with having different spiritual awakenings along my sobriety and the things that I've had to let go and the blessings that have come from letting those things go. What I have found is in those moments, I get a couple years. I get a couple years of like riding high on God is good before I start swinging that pendulum again to that, you know, spiritual life, alcoholic death, you know? And so I don't know how much longer I have to ride on this God is good. And I have to give everything to God and know that like the blessings are on the other side of saying like, my hand is open to release whatever you need to take. And in some of those terrible prayers, the worst prayers are offering to God that, God, you get to take this. And when it's come to, and we see a lot of death here, we see a lot of suffering, we see not everybody can stay sober, and some of us want people to stay sober more than the person. And we see people who face suicide. Alcoholism is a horrible disease when it is not treated. And I think in those horrible prayers, it's saying, God, see to it that they have peace in any means that they can have peace. This idea that I know how anything should be, offering that I just can't hold on for a second longer of trying to control whether somebody's going to get sober or whether they're going to do this program or not. I release them to God, that they can find peace in any form that they can find peace. It does not have to be on my terms and how I found it. However they can find peace, I pray for that. And in offering the most horrible prayers there are, the ones that I can't even say out loud, getting to the place where I finally can say it is where I find freedom. And we hear about people talk about the freedom of the bondage of self and the freedom of this disease, and it comes in the form of developing a relationship with a God of our understanding. So for anybody that's new and wherever you're at, I strongly encourage you to dive into this program, to get a sponsor, to do this one day at a time, to get involved in the fellowship and in service, to connect with not just one person, but as many people as possible, because life shows up, life on life's term, and I don't know if you're going to be able to keep your job or keep your wife or keep your friends, or your kids are going to talk to you again. But I know that it talks about that wife, no wife, job, no job, that we can stay sober under any conditions. See to it that you stay close to God. That's all I got.